Hello and welcome to Raider HQ After Dark. I'm your host Raider. And in this video, I am attempting to answer your questions from the 10/25/2025 live stream. Now, a lot of you might watch this video or might click on this video and go, "Oh, he's just answering other people's questions. This isn't very interesting and it doesn't, apply to me." Well, the thing that I'm going to say is that a lot of the time, even though the question might not be yours, you can still glean some information from these questions. Something that pops into my head based upon how it's asked that is not common knowledge to everyone. That's a lot of the reason why people come to this channel is because they want to talk to somebody that has done the job. There are other raiders out there in the world that do YouTube channels, and there are some retired raiders that do YouTube channels. uh, you guys go there for a reason. It's because you want to know how the sausage is made. So watching these videos, although not directly for you, can be beneficial. So that's my little PSA. I would also like to say, and it's kind of humorous, that we are, at the time of this recording, we are almost at the mark of the beast, 6,662 subscribers. So we're almost to the mark of the beast. It'll probably happen while I'm doing this video, so I won't be able to capture it in real time. But anyway, thank you all for watching and subscribing. It really does help the channel. It helps get the message out. So let's get on to the questions because we have limited time here. So we ended with question 15, and we're going to start with question 16. So Terrence, can obstructive sleep apnea be considered or granted secondary to chronic obstructive pulmonary disease? The answer to this question is yes, it can. However, if it is granted, like medically, it can be, there's potentially a causal relationship there if the C&P examiners deem it to be. The OSA would be combined with the COPD, and whichever of the two, what we would do is we would rate them individually. So we would say, okay, you've got a CPAP, you're at 50% for sleep apnea. Oh, your COPD based upon your pulmonary function test is 30% or something. We would combine them together with the higher of the two evaluations being the primary condition. So in my, likely false example, it would be OSA with COPD. But yes, it technically can be. Where you might see some divergence is at the 50-60% ratings. Sometimes you can see a benefit for claiming both of them, but oftentimes you won't. Next question, Thomas. Have you ever rated PLMD, periodic limb movement disorder? Could this be granted direct, or should it be a secondary condition? So the first question is, yes, I have. Most commonly, I've granted it under restless leg syndrome, secondary to sleep apnea, or actually directly even I've granted it. The periodic limb movement portion isn't special. It's just, it has to medically make sense. So the theory that you're going to choose, direct or secondary, will be exclusively based on the evidence that you have and which one's stronger. So if you have a lot of evidence showing that in service, this particular condition manifested, that it was diagnosed in service, then the direct theory would be the stronger of the two, because you can show the etiology or the cause when it manifested was in service. So that's the domain of the direct theory for service connection. Now, if you do not have that fact pattern, and let's say that your condition manifested after service, well, then direct is off the table, because it technically can't be direct because you're missing element 2, in service event, diagnosis, or treatment, right? So if that fact pattern right there, element 2 typically decides what theory is the strongest for you. So please keep that in mind. And I would like to make a statement right here, is that my neighbor has lost their mind and they're trying to blow wet leaves, and they've been at it for hours. So if you hear a leaf blower in the background, it's my insane neighbor. So I apologize for that in advance if that's the case. And the dogs are going nuts too because they hate it. Okay, question 18, the Veterans Aid. I like the name. Is there anything that can be done to prompt, in quotes, the VA to take a look at a CUNE motion that has been uploaded by an attorney slash claims agent? It has just been sitting there with no one looking at it. There is no way to prompt the VA to do anything. You could technically upload new evidence. Um, I would want to know what it is waiting on. Is it waiting on development? Is there an open tracked item for the claim in which it's waiting at the national work queue for the suspense to expire? Or is it just sitting at the national work queue and it doesn't have priority processing and it's just waiting on somebody? So, I mean, you can call the 1-800-827-1000 number and getting that information. Are there any currently open tracked items for the claim? If they say yes, then I'd want to know what it is because they're waiting on something. It might be they might be looking for missed STRs or something like that related to the CUNE that you called. So that's going to be knowing that information helps you to determine kind of how long the process will take. Mr. Ray has a back-to-backer here. Pes planus secondary to knees. Pes planus secondary to hip. Pes planus secondary to lumbar strain. Question mark. Okay. I'm going to say something, and this just comes from my experience, so you can't generalize it as an absolute. From my experience, examiners do not like to say that a disability anatomically above another disability caused the disability below it, right? They don't like to do that. So an example is literally, how is flat feet caused by your knees? They don't like to do that. They like to say there's no anatomical correlation between the two things. The knees are not directly connected to the arches of your feet. And, so it's a challenging secondary to make. But if you're going to make this, and we got growling dog. So if you're going to make this particular secondary, then it should probably be pes planus secondary to altered gait, and gait means walking, altered walking. You're out of ergonomic. You're hunched over. You're kind of walking weird, so it puts additional strain on additional joints of the body. So, but it would be pes planus secondary to altered gait caused by service-connected knees, hips, and lumbar strain. That would probably be the stronger theory to apply here, because if you claim it like this, what'll happen is the examiner will they'll send in 1, 2, 3 separate denial medical opinions. And they'll say, well, pes planus has nothing to do with the knees. Pes planus is not anatomically connected to the hips and has nothing to do with the hips. Pes planus has nothing to do with the lumbar sacral strain because they're not anatomically connected. You have to use the altered gait as kind of an intermediate step where you say this intermediate step of altered gait, which is caused by these service connected conditions, has at present caused my pes planus. Now, you need to bring science, Mr. Ray. You need to bring a lot of science and you need to bring a lot of evidence to support that, not just in the general population, but specifically for you, that your doctors are noticing that they're compensating for it, that the altered gait has caused you to XYZ. Let's go to Mr. Ray's second question here. Migraines secondary to PTSD. Yes, I've granted it quite a bit. Actually, I am currently service connected for that. And the way medically that I was able to show it is that I had, how you have migraine logs? I had panic attack logs. So I would have panic attacks. And I mean, I swear, more often than not, like 80% of the time, 20 minutes after I had a severe panic attack, I'd get a migraine. And I went to my doctor and I'm like, look, man, this is happening. Like what I keep getting these migraine. I'll have a panic attack and then I'll have a migraine and it's like a day of misery, right? Like I don't know what to do here. Can we fix one or the other of these? Because this is miserable. And so we kind of monitored it and they explained it to me that, whenever you have a panic attack, your heart's race, your blood vessels dilate, and they kind of talk about they talk to me about the anatomical physiological cause and effect that anxiety attacks specifically, not PTSD, because here's the problem. PTSD is a diagnosis do not cause migraines. Nothing causes migraines. However, symptoms of a diagnosis can cause migraines. So please keep that in mind. I hope that my personal example has helped you to understand like the mechanism that the secondaries have a higher likelihood of success. Because when you just say PTSD causes my migraines or migraines secondary to PTSD, the examiners look at that in a very weird way. They do not go, okay, let me try to understand what he's trying to tell me here. So what part of PTSD causes your migraines? What they do is they go, PTSD is a mental health disorder. Migraines is it's kind of a neurological disorder, but it's also can have something to do with the blood vessels and whatnot. But they're like, these two things have nothing in common. But when you break down the symptoms, and I did this in a different video, but when you break down the symptoms, that's what you need to tell them. That's how you've got to clue in these doctors on, to make sure that they know they're picking up what you're putting down in how your specific symptoms cause you to have migraines. Because they do. They like to just say no. Whenever it's presented just like this, they will say no, unless you have evidence to support it. All right. For IBS to be rated 30%, does the veteran know? Now, I know I said I would finish the questions before I answered them, but this is a straight no. For IBS to be rated at 30%, does the veteran have to be anemic by lab tests? If the veteran has all the symptoms to qualify for 30%, except for being diagnosed anemic, can they get the 30%? So there is no anemic requirement for the 38 CFR. I need that to be known. So I'm going there right now. 7319. That's the IBS. Okay. So IBS is here. We're going to change our screen. We're going to actually, hold on. Through the power of editing, I'm going to snip this and I'm going to add it to the thing in real time, and you get the full meal deal. So we get to say, but the answer is no, because there is no actual need for anemia. I don't know if you're looking at the wrong like condition. Where's IBS? Where did I put it? I hate all of this. IBS. Hold on. 1 second. All right, and we're back with limited barking interruption. So as you look here, there's no anemia on here. There's no IBS does not have an anemia component to it. So if you were previously denied for, anemia not being a thing, then that would be a higher level review because 30%, the only difference between 10, 20, and 30% for IBS is the frequency to which you have the painful defecation. That's it. So I hope that answers your question. And let's go back to here. Yeah, that's not anything. Is it normal to have 4 C&Ps for TBI? Yes, it is. It is because you can have 4 different ancillary conditions like mental health, tinnitus. You can have TBI itself, DBQ. You can have migraines, DBQ. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to, number one, rule in and rule out whether or not these things should be, number one, do they exist? Number two, should they be combined together or rated separately? So that is normal, yes. And let me go back here so we can see the names. Okay. I am submitting an independent medical opinion and DBQ for mental health from Dr. Sharma. I also want to put in a claim for migraines secondary to mental health. Should I wait or submit them together? I would wait. I would wait. And here's why. Because Dr. Sharma's specific DBQ has to go through an authenticity and credibility review. If it fails, then you will get sent to a VA examiner, and there will be a negative, potentially, a negative tone associated with, hey, look, he has to go to this exam now. It'll become a hot mess. What you want to do is you want to hopefully get service connected for the mental health and then separately get it rated secondary to the mental health. I would wait, personally. It's just me, just my opinion, but I would honestly wait. Warrior. Raider, do you believe the new mental health new criteria will be implemented this year? And if so, should I wait for a potential increase till all these kinks are ironed out? So I do not like to talk about the future tense of how the VA will or will not do things, but I I don't know on when it's going to take place. That's why I'm not doing a video every 10 minutes, because on the topic, because I know that it would get views. Like, you guys would just go nuts over it. It would probably be like one of the most viewed videos, and that would be cool. But it would also be hollow because there's no way for anybody to tell until they implement a hard time, right? This will go into effect on this date. That's whenever I will talk about like it in detail. Now, I will answer your question. Now, a lot of YouTubers disagree with me on this fact, but I think that the changes when they go into effect are going to be great for some people and horrible for other people. So, for individuals who do not have personality disorders, the changes will be awesome. For individuals with personality disorders, this change will not be awesome because the change requires you to effectively communicate with the examiner. You have to give your story and recount as an accurate reporter what is going on with your life in order for you to be able to show that your spheres of your life are impacted and how frequently they are impacted. So if you are not able to communicate, then this change is detrimental to you, because historically they would use things like hallucinations, delusions, circumlogical speech patterns, like medical assessments to identify how severely disabled you are. And in a lot of instances, that impairment won't translate to the new criteria. So for individuals with personality disorders that the symptoms are more assessment based, they're going to hurt from this change. Veterans with mood disorders that are effective at communicating, then it's going to be a benefit for them. It'll be drastically easier for individuals with mood disorders to get 100% than it will be for individuals with personality disorders. I would wait. I guess, I'm sorry, I went off on a tangent there. Herky Burns. I'm getting ready to file for PTSD. I was a heavy drinker in the past and have developed neuropathy in my knees and feet. What would be the best plan of attack for alcohol abuse? Okay. I would file it with your I would file it with your PTSD and it will probably get combined with it. The neuropathy, that might be diabetes related if you have diabetes. But I haven't really ever granted alcohol as a number one. Alcohol cannot abuse. We call it substance use disorder, but substance use disorder cannot be a primary condition. It has to be secondary to like PTSD. And then the neuropathy, I've never granted neuropathy secondary to alcohol abuse. So kind of a weird thing there. You might now, if you have diabetes due to the alcohol abuse, then that's a different thing. Okay. Sherry Sanford. Can VSO see code sheets? Okay. Oh my gosh, this is gonna set me off. Um, and not you. It's not you. It's just the fact that I found this out recently. So if the VSOs have access to VBMS, then yes, they can see the code sheets. They have full access to your code sheets. If the VSO doesn't have access to VBMS, walk out the door because they are useless. Not as a person or anything like that, but they're not able to review things to have accuracy. Now, I can make predictions on things based upon like years of doing this, years of fact patterns being presented in front of me. Most VSOs, if not almost all VSOs, do not have that particular experience to fall back on. So they don't have any kind of intuition to be able, they just kind of throw spaghetti at the wall, and it's not the highest likelihood of success. Now, if they have VBMS in front of them, then that is a tool that can be used all the time, to not just guess at things, but to be sure at things. Have you ever claimed this secondary? Oh, well, I can just look in your VBMS and just check, right? Versus, having to ask people questions and try to figure out how you're saying things in order to determine that. I hope that helps. I haven't had a PTSD exam yet. Is it possible my therapist and VA psychiatrist's opinions are enough for the rater on this one? No, it's not. Because, well, and it depends. It depends on what stressor you're kind of claiming for. If you're claiming fear-based, then you have to have your VA exam done by the VA C&P examiner. And we can't use your medical opinions or anything like that. Not to mention, the way PTSD is determined is not like any other condition. The examiner gets to tell us whether or not the condition is due to fear-based or like, which stressor caused you to have the PTSD. It is up to the rater to verify and concede the stressor. I mean, well, technically it's up to the VSR to concede the stressor, but it's up to the rater to authorize that the stressor is accurate, like that we can concede it. Like if you tell us that, hey, look, I, I got my PTSD from my time in Iraq, and I can't prove that you were in Iraq, you're not getting granted. I don't care what any doctor tells us. If I can't prove that you went there, then there's no way on earth and under heaven that you're getting granted, because the rater has to determine whether or not the stressor is true or false. And for PTSD claims, element 2, which in this circumstances is the stressor, is the most critical piece of information. That's why we send additional development for it. That's why they just go nuts over it. And it's not like that. The medical opinion, the rater decides whether or not you're granted for PTSD. So I hope that helps. Okay, I filed for a CUNE, a clear and unmistakable error, a clear and unmistakable bark for IBS and GERD. Enough. I filed that claim back in 2010. I left service in 1977. I have since got my C file and found out that I was treated for both in service and they did not use that. In my decision, it was denied. That's why I filed the CUNE. Okay. So that would be a duty to assist, and because it's before 2018, you might actually have something, because they changed it to where duty to assist issues were before 2018. They were considered clear and unmistakable errors. After 2018, they were separated to where they're not a clear and unmistakable error. So you might have something there. You can try to file it, but I would file it with an attorney, just because there are certain fact, well, I don't want to say fact patterns, but there's certain structure of how your evidence, you have to show certain criteria in order for a CUNE to be deemed legitimate. Attorneys, this is their wheelhouse, to be able to satisfy that criteria. And we have the looping thing. Raider HQ from Patriot. I have a C&P exam scheduled for cervical spine degenerative disc disease with radiculopathy claims secondary to service-connected Lumbar spine degenerative disc disease. What are the key things a rater is looking for in the examiner's report to establish secondary? And I can't read the rest, but I'm just going to leave it at that. So here's the problem. The problem isn't going to be the rater. The problem is going to be the examiner saying that your neck is caused by your back. I have never, ever granted that. I have never seen that service connected because the causal relationship, unless it's like the disease process degenerative arthritis that can move, like rheumatoid arthritis that can move between joints. If it's not that, then there's almost no way that an examiner will say that your back caused your neck. Like, what is the causal relationship of that? I mean, I've never seen it successfully granted just because of that. Like, just because there's no way to say, like, I guess one fact pattern could be like, hey, look, my back's at 40%. I can't bend over. I lost my balance and I fell down, hit my neck, and fractured a cervical vertebra. That would be a potential secondary right there. Like, that's the fact pattern that would need to happen for you to show a causal relationship, because you have to understand, examiners will actually go, their job is to find alternative causes. If they can find an alternative cause for your neck condition, then it can't be due to your spine. And they will almost certainly find an alternative cause for your neck, so that way it cannot be service connected secondary to your spine. It's just the way that they work. It's how they do things. It's not anything I'm keen on, but that's what happens. So it will be an uphill challenge. Now, the rater, they're just going to, like, if you want to know the rater's perspective, let's say that the examiner gave a positive secondary medical opinion. Well, they have to provide a medical rationale. If their medical rationale is, yeah, I think it's true, that's not good enough. They have to provide evidence as to why it's good enough, as evidenced by here, here, and here. The veterans, their doctor here said that there's a causal relationship between the two. They had to have surgery because of it. Yada yada yada. He fell down. He hit his neck. Like, we have to have, for any kind of medical opinion to be sufficient, there has to be a medical rationale, and more than because I said so. Now, and that's about all I got for you on that one, Patriot. And I'm sorry, it's probably not what you want to hear, but I have a claim for sinusitis denied. I've got the time and place, symptoms, and diagnosis, which I'm assuming is for the presumptive under 38 CFR 3.320. Evidence on 7 visits over the past 20 years, but denied. It was favorable, Tara, but why not presumptive? So, in order for this to be granted, the sinusitis has, well, okay. I'm going to make a lot of assumptions here. If you have qualifying service, if you are a covered veteran under 38 CFR 3.320, and you went to Iraqistan, any of the stands, all the qualifying locations, Kuwait, look in the M21 and see, you have the diagnosis, you might want to do a higher level review and say, hey, look, I'm qualified under 38 CFR 3.320 for the airborne hazards presumptive for sinusitis. Why wasn't I considered this? Because you guys gave me the favorable finding of Tara, but you forgot to review me to grant me for, the presumptive. This happens. This is why, like, raters are not infallible. Okay, this is why sometimes when people in the comment section go, "No, that doesn't happen." Yeah, well, guess what? It also doesn't happen that raters miss presumptive conditions that they should have caught within 2 seconds, right? You can't weigh it. You can't say every rater is this good because they're not. Some raters are not good at their job. And because of the quality and production system, they don't get caught. These are the people that miss presumptive conditions when they should be presumptive. These are the people with 100% quality. These are the people that are the cousin of somebody. These are the people that you shake your head and go, they need an IQ test to work here. I mean it. It's like it happens. This stuff happens all the time. There are people who should not have any job, like think about the job that you do for a living. There are people that that work in that job that have no business working there. The same is true in the VBA in all the positions. So for this one, Clark, I'd just do a higher level review if your fact pattern matches up that you should have been, presumptively, if it was a presumptive condition. And just do that and see what they say. But would an approved reasonable accommodation request from my employer due to PTSD, anxiety, disability be acceptable documentation for my inability to adapt to stressful workplace situations? Yes. But you have to convince the examiner of that. So for the PTSD, a lot of PTSD today, but for the mental health DBQs, you have to provide examples to the examiner in order for them to check boxes. If you just go in there and say, yeah, I'm depressed, doc, they're going to check one box. You need to have examples in your real life, true examples of how your depression manifests. So that way they can check many more boxes to include inability to adapt to stressful workplace situations. Your reasonable accommodation will help, but they will want to be like, look, let me tell you about this time, like they changed they changed the process to how I do X, Y, and Z. And I started getting short with my coworkers, like I started getting frustrated. It started to annoy me because I'm like, why did they even change it? There's no benefit added to changing it. What happened? I don't understand. Like, I don't need to because I'm not the boss. I'm just a frontline grunt. But why did they change it? It made no sense to me. So here I am working in this situation where I'm doing things that are dumb, that have no purpose, no business being done. And I'm trying to get through it, and I'm just getting madder and madder and madder. And people come up to me and I bite their head off because I'm like having to do this stupid nonsense. Do you see that fact pattern right there? Like, that's different than me going, I have a reasonable accommodation because I have difficulty in adapting to stressful situations. The way I described it is the way I would describe it to an examiner. And I would give them the full, I would have them drink through a fire hose of my experience and kind of talk to them about that, because it helps you in order to give them a mental picture so that way they want to check the box. Jamie, will TBI and PTSD be combined together, or should I file one then the other? Regardless, they will the TBI SME, subject matter expert, will actually determine whether or not they will be combined together or separately rated. Now, keep in mind, no matter what, if they're combined or separate, it will be to the advantage of the veteran. That's written in the M21 at least. 33, North Idaho guy. I remember North Idaho guy. Hello, Raider. Just received my initial decision, including bilateral upper radiculopathy. Several other conditions were deferred, including my neck. How do they do radiculopathy that is linked to neck deferred? Well, it depends. So this question doesn't have enough information to fully understand it. I don't know whether or not you were granted or denied. Sometimes what can happen is we can grant the neck, we can grant the radiculopathy, and then defer back for some other like we can grant the radiculopathy because we're granting the neck, defer back because some questions weren't answered to help us differentiate between 10 and 30% for the range of motion issues, or it could just be a sufficiency thing where we need to defer back and see. I don't have enough information on this one, but that's typically why. And I'm going to go to 35 here. But Rodney, Raider HQ, appreciate all that you're doing for us. Well, thank you. I appreciate you guys, the veteran community. Since today's my birthday, can I have one of those gifted memberships as a present? Sorry, I don't have that. I don't get to assign them. TS88199. I'm rated at 30% for sleep apnea. They must not have like my oral appliance. If I show them my CPAP papers, is it an auto 50? Okay. It depends on how you were granted. If you were granted under any theory other than aggravation, then yes. Your CPAP papers are an auto 50%. However, if you were granted under the theory of aggravation, 38 CFR 3.306, then the answer might be no, because it depends on what your pre-enlistment symptoms were. Because what happens with aggravation under 38 CFR 3.306, aggravation of a pre-existing condition, is that we have to rate your condition at onset of military service, and then we subtract whatever that value is from whatever you get rated. So you could be 50 minus 20 equals 30. And that could be not the maximum, but that could be the maximum for a CPAP that you could get, or an oral appliance. So please keep that in mind, that it's not an absolute. If you were granted under aggravation of a pre-existing condition, it could be a lot more complex than you think. But that, and we're ending at 35, but that's about all I got for you in this one, guys. I will be doing a live stream tonight, so we'll be asking more questions to have them answered. But other than that, I am Raider HQ. And I'd like to take the time to thank all the people that are watching, subscribing, liking, doing all the fun stuff. Everybody that has become a member to the channel. I appreciate you guys. Your support to the channel helps out so much. Other than that, that's about all I got for you today. Raider out.